Welcome to the 4th Annual Guild of Music Supervisors Conference.
Thank you for the warm welcome, everybody.
Okay, so as I said, this is really tricky. So we've tried to figure out how we can do this. So we're going to start just by saying, when you first get that gig, because we're going to eliminate the part about choosing if you're going to take the job or not. We're going to be at the stage that you've
Or begging for the gig.
for work, or that we've gotten this job, and it's the beginning. It's sort of like the first day you're hired on this movie, and what happens then? Like, what's the first thing that happens with the script in your hand and you're about to do this movie that has musical numbers? Oh, and I want to say one more thing. We're covering playback for motion pictures. Most of the things are similar in television, but there's time constraints, there's budget constraints, there's a lot of things that are different on that level, not the technical level. So we are talking about movies, and the examples we use will also be from movies. So I just want to say that first. So, Steve, we're going to take this to you. You have the script. There's musical numbers. What happens?
Don't panic. So usually this is assuming that I've read the script before for my own enjoyment and sort of absorbed what the story is. So when I've gotten the job, my first task really is to sit down and spend a lot of time with that script and just go through it scene by scene by scene and do a breakdown, do a grid of every single musical reference that's in the script.
We get that.
And actually, and we have.
That's the grid.
My La La Land, one of my thousands of La La Land grids is coming.
We want to put the La La Land grid up.
But the tech guy's gone.
Oh, no.
Envision a colorful grid.
Oh, no. We do have the grid to show you.
It's beautiful. Yeah, so we break down every single moment and make little columns and charts, make notations on, is it something that needs to be licensed? Is it a song that we need to write? Is it something that maybe we want to record live on set? Is that even possible? Just sort of, the grid is notating what's in the script, but also asking all the big questions so that you can bring that to your meetings with your producers and your directors and your music director and walk through all the beats. And you talk about, okay, bam, we've got this thing on a freeway. What are we going to do? What do we need? And how are we going to accomplish that? So it's sort of your roadmap, for lack of a better way of putting it, to guide you through the process. And then from that first stab of a grid that answers all, that we're asking all the questions, and as the meetings roll on, then we have a second grid. Okay, we'll go to the first one.
Grid, the La La Land grid. Yeah.
I just want to say, while Steve's talking about the grid, I think one of the most impressive things in La La Land, the movie was impressive, of course, is the opening scene. I mean, I watched that scene and I was hyperventilating, going, "Oh my God, how did they shoot that scene? And how are they all together?" And I mean, not everyone has that visceral reaction, but it's really great that Steve's here because he can talk about how that actually was shot, which is incredible.
I mean, thank you. And it's interesting. People ask me, bring that up all the time. And there was something oddly liberating about the La La Land freeway scene because we weren't trying to emulate something that had already been done. We weren't trying to one-up something that had already been done. It had never been done. So we were on our own to figure out how to do it. And it was one of those great moments. It's a perfect scene of every department working together. Music was working with choreography. We were working with props. We were working with transportation. We were working with locations. We were working with costuming.
But if you look at the grid, early stage, which you're going to see.
Stay on topic,
grid.
Steve.
No, not stay on topic. No, not at all. This is about that. Yeah. You don't know any of this yet, is all I'm saying. Yeah. All it says right there is yes.
Yeah. So
right.
this so basically it says, yes. Another day of sun musical number. And that's, it's much larger than that one line on an Excel grid.
It was 3 minutes and 7 seconds.
Yes, exactly. And it kept ebbing and flowing. And as we rehearsed, we kept stretching the song and shrinking the song based upon how the dancers were working with it.
And the grid would get more filled in, which we'll show theirs in a minute. But this is your beginning phase.
So this is the beginning, and you note the shoot date if you have it, and the scene, and all the crucial information that the lesson with these grids too is also just as you build them, just distribute them as widely as possible to anybody that might have need of that information, because it's crucial.
Even if they don't have need, everyone always ends up wanting
So
it.
wait, how many people here saw La La Land? Okay, great. So
okay.
Steve, Can you tell a little more about the process of that opening number? Like how we said, we all hyperventilate, but if you could talk about, in the script, you're just reading, okay, so people, they can dance on a car or whatever it said. Now you actually have to actualize it. So what were your steps to get that scene done from beginning to end?
I think that's what the script said, was people get out and dance on cars.
Right. Okay, so then what happened?
Yeah, it was less than a page.
People dance on cars.
Yeah.
Okay, next.
And next. So we had a song. We had, the lyrics are mostly set, and we just began the demo process. Demo singers, synth demo, and going through the approval process of the director and the producer and the composer, piecing that together to a point where the song itself was working. From there,
How much time did that take?
That was about a year before I even came on the project, actually.
Okay, so this would also be one of the big differences between television, because the show's already on over in syndication by the time he's done this.
And we worked really closely with our dance department led by Mandy Moore, communicating with her on a daily basis. Like, okay, we've now removed one verse, and she's working with the dancers, and we're all together in a parking lot, for example, rehearsing with vehicles and dancers. And we're sitting there watching, like, oh, okay, it takes her much longer to get to that car than we thought. We got to open up the song a little bit. Oh, she's getting there much faster. We got to shorten it. So it was an ebb and flow and a constant tightening of the song as you're working with human beings, because human beings sort of bring that factor that you can't plan on. And we were really lucky to have the ability to actually shut down the freeway the week before we shot and to spend a half day up there, because that changed everything. Actually, we had to go in and change the song quite a bit. We moved.
This is a week before you shot. You're changing the song?
Week before we shot, yeah. And then clearly a lot more detail than that. But
well, what I think is most interesting is talk about how you played back the song when you were shooting, because that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so we had wedges, so that's us working with the sound department.
Wait. Back up before that. How much, when the song was recorded now, exactly how much of the song was recorded? Because I think that's relevant. How one of these things with musicals is often when you're recording these songs, scenes get cut out of the movie. So you kind of want to limit how much money is going into these recording costs and recorded the most bare bones that you need to shoot the scene without spending all the production money, like putting on strings or this or whatever, of a scene that could disappear. But you have this complicated thing. So how did you go about recording it?
Which was actually, the scene was cut from the film for a while too, but that's a whole other story.
Wow.
The whole thing was just a synth mock-up with demo singers. It was more important that they were dancers on screen, so we knew that we would replace the voices later with actual singers. So it was all demo. And interesting enough, as you're working on these scenes, there's sometimes something intangible that you just have to use your instinct to figure out. Like, as we were working with the dancers on this number, something wasn't clicking. It was, all the pieces were in place, the song was great, the lyrics were locked, the dancers were the best dancers in the world, but there was that extra little magic was missing, and we couldn't figure it out. And we thought, you know what, this is all synth drum stuff. Maybe these are dancers that react to everything they hear. So we went in and we actually did spend quite a bit of money recording. We did some percussion sessions and layered in. But we know, because we just knew, like,
for the sequence.
Yeah, and it just brought it to life. Once you start adding shakers and all this other really great ethnic stuff, it just it came to life. That was not something I would normally advise because it's a big expense, but it was something that we knew would improve the performance on the day of the shoot.
And also, you didn't randomly just do that. You were rehearsing. It's like something's not right, and that was the solution. So it was actually a very educated decision on spending that money. It wasn't like a random use of funds. You needed it to get the performance you got. And so then what happened? So then that's it? You were done with the scene?
No, but we don't have so much time.
I know. We just wanted to do
but
that
then,
scene.
and there's, as we were shooting the scene, everybody has horror stories of things that go wrong, and I think what we'll talk about here is just to make sure that your playback material is totally buttoned up and you've worked through it, you've rehearsed it till, within an inch of its life, and have a bunch of backup plans in place. Because oftentimes you get on set and it's not the playback that gets screwed up. It's something that you think is totally not part of your purview, but it ends up your problem because it's a song day. So when it's a music scene day, everybody sort of turns to you, even if it's not your problem, technically. So on this particular scene, since we're talking about this, my problem became a truck. There is, if you recall, there's a storage truck that a dancer has to open. There's 4 musicians inside and they play. So we get up there and the truck door is heavier than we think. So we had to drill a hole in the back, and a grip is in the back that has to pull the thing open. Then we're shooting, and it's 110 degrees, and I've got 4 musicians inside, and there's no ventilation. So I'm like, I don't want my people to die. That doesn't reflect very well in the music department. So we had to cut another hole in the back to put an AC vent in it. Now we've got it running, but there's also the door has to hit on the final beat of the song, and when you release the chord, it takes a while for that thing to come down. So now we have to work to time out, on what beat do we let go of the rope? So I'm back there, we tap the grip, okay, boom, let go, boom. And these are things that you don't really plan on, but again, they become part of your problem when you're on set, and you just have to remain calm and figure it out.
So to go from that, I think when we're talking about scenes and how they're shot, because we're sort of skipping around about how you actually have to prep the scene. In a Cliff Notes fashion, because we're trying to tell the story. So I want to move to you guys and talk about, and maybe we can put on your grid, but it gets more complicated. So I think first probably we'll do Pitch Perfect while we're staying in playback and pre-recorded music, because that's a very different level of complication where you're just having a cappella singers, and how do you go about doing that, and where there's dancing and everything that's going on. Both of these were big song and dance numbers, but yours has theirs is really being reality. Yours is clearly this giant musical number. They've got kids singing in competitions that have to be believable, which, a little side thing on that is there's a difference between, let's say, Bollywood type movies where you're seeing a musical and it's fake and the design is fake, and when you're recording it, it's fake and everyone knows it's fake. You're not supposed to be in perfect lip sync. No one cares. It's like you're suspending reality versus doing a Pitch Perfect kind of thing, or My Fair Lady, or something where you're believing people are just breaking into song, and they truly are breaking into song. If you're just off a frame in your lip sync, the whole movie falls apart. So you have some very complicated singing going on. Perhaps you could talk to that, and I have your grid, which shows
a little bit
next
different.
phase what happens.
It's interesting. People think we listen to music all day, but actually we make grids all day. And I love myself some grids.
That's the truth.
Make it bigger and show like a earlier.
I just want to show you guys what Julianne and I, this is called our on-camera grid, and this is a working grid that we use just to get a little detail. It's in shoot date order, because we want to know what's coming first, what's coming. So it's not as overwhelming. You're just prepping for the days. You've obviously done a lot of prep before this, but you're prepping for the days. It's hard to read, but we have it broken down. There we go.
Oh.
We have it broken down by...
I just want to ask you how much, so Steve's done his thing, he's read the script. How much time has passed between that and here, ostensibly?
Well, we've clearly chosen all the songs. So, a year or 8 months? I don't know.
Yeah, probably
maybe 6 months.
6 months.
Okay.
Because we've had a mock-up. The Pitch Perfect is kind of a entity on its own. We won't get into the nitty-gritty of choosing songs and doing arrangements, but we have to do the songs work for a cappella, because you think you have a great idea, and then we have these awesome arrangers, and then it comes and you're like, not so much. So anyway, just to quickly touch, it's done by character, by scene, the description, the material. And then what we do here is talk about, like the first one, we may also shoot an alt, and we need earwigs on set. And then these are just, columns this is the final grid. So these X's were not in there when we started. The demo's been approved. We've distributed the parts to the cast so they learn their material. The playback recording is complete. Sometimes we put ringers or background singers on our demos. Then we have to distribute to all the actors and to our choreographer. And then we have edits for shooting. So this is a little bit of a Cliff Note version, but
I want to just ask a question. How many people here know what earwigs are? Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so
good top.
You want to?
Yeah. Let me just do the broad overview of pitch, and then we can talk specifically about scene. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay. So
tell them about earwigs.
Oh yeah. Okay. So
you want me to tell what the
no, I'll tell about earwigs.
Okay.
So it's interesting because actors don't really love earwigs because they're not really singers. When bands are playing at a concert, they usually have their earwig in their ear, and so they can hear their voice, they can hear their vocal, because there's always a delay. And if there's dialogue in a scene, right, you're capturing dialogue, you can't play music during that time.
You can't record it.
You can't record it, or you can't play because it's going to wind up in the soundtrack. So you put the music in the actor's ear so they can hear it. Like if they're dancing, there's a lot of different uses for earwigs, but let's say there's a band that's in the background and they're playing, but someone's talking in the foreground. The band has their track in their ear and they're faking playing because we can't record the drums or we can't record the guitar. They're faking, so they're actually in time. So when you cut the scene, there's dialogue in the front, but the band's actually in time. Does that make sense?
And then they're lip
Okay.
syncing to what's in the earwig, the music. And sometimes, if there's going to be music playing in the room, like let's say it's a live band, so there's no dialogue being recorded, then you don't have to use earwigs, and everyone's hearing the music. Otherwise, when you're shooting, it's only in the actor's ears. And actually, going full circle to the Indian comment I made earlier about a Bollywood musical, I was doing a musical in India that was not going to be, that was an American movie, and we had some sequences there where it was going to be like Pitch Perfect or My Fair Lady. And in prep, when I'm putting in the budget for the earwigs, they get in a fight with me about it, saying, you don't need earwigs. And I said, well, yes, you do. No, you don't. And I had to write a 2-page memo explaining why you needed earwigs. And I said to the producer and the director at one point, well, wait a minute, before I argue about this, tell me what the conceit of this movie is. Because I thought we were doing like My Fair Lady, where people break into song. But are we doing a Bollywood film where they can be off sync and no one cares? He said, no, we're doing My Fair Lady. I said, then we're getting earwigs. And I literally had to write a 2-page memo because they don't use earwigs in India to shoot movies. They just shoot them.
And sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, actors don't want to wear earwigs. They're not comfortable and they're not used to them. So you can do really low speaker playback, very low speaker playback, and it will bleed, but it's okay because it makes it sound a little more live. So but what Steve's saying is you go to set and you think you're doing something one way, and all of a sudden you are scrambling because there's a change in plan. So we've been doing this a long time, but prepping for every day. You can talk about Stars next, but the plan changes. So you think you're prepared, you think you're doing earwigs, and all of a sudden you're doing speaker playback. So it's your job to make sure the speakers, the sound guys there, you're prepared for every scenario.
Right, and since we seem to be making little assumptions like that you knew what earwigs were. I mean, and really, it's this we need to. This is like a basic thing. So the other thing is when we're talking about playback stuff, that is music that's being played on the set, and usually there is someone there, either a playback operator or a music editor, so that when there's a sudden change and suddenly you need 2 bars shorter, someone can quickly edit it right on the set, and you can change the choreography if needed, or something, and have it right there on the spot. But because the key thing about all this is the changes that happen suddenly and figuring out how to navigate them, whether it's a truck door or...
And the earwig issue is a question that you ask yourself sort of up top, right?
Yeah, at the beginning.
Is this something that conceivably we could record live vocals? Do we want to? Is this something we should investigate? So there are moments like Another Day of Sun, for example, that we talked about earlier. No way, there's too many variables, not going to happen. But
these are all questions we bring up. Yeah, these are all questions we bring up to the producer director and say, how do you want this done? And
exactly, like what should this scene look like? How do you want to communicate it? What do you want the audience to feel? What are they supposed to believe is happening? Because also, I mean, all these things, there is a price tag. So when you're looking at budgets, earwigs have to be rented or earwigs aren't rented. Speakers are there or they're not. Like every one of these little decisions leads to another decision.
I think another, specifically to our playback for Pitch Perfect, another big thing was because, all the girls are singing all the different parts of the song. So you got somebody going do 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 do, and someone singing the melody, and somebody beatboxing, and somebody doing. So when we were doing playback on those scenes, we needed them on set. The guys who were the a cappella arrangers for all the songs, because they had the expertise in seeing who should be singing which part. And of course, we were watching this as well, but they were really tuned in to, and they know every part. And so that was so important to have on this film. And then if there were, and then so the arranger would, after one take, say, oh, she's not doing blah, 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 and would go up, he had a relationship with all the singers, go out, actresses, and say, will you do this a little more? And, this isn't your part, this is da-da-da. So that was, in that type of movie where it has to be so precise, was super important. And there were some, so in post, we were able to fix some of that stuff that through magic of movie making and editing that was missing. But for the most part, like it was so important to have someone there who.
Which is
And
a good
actually,
question to
speaking
ask
of-
at the top. Like, who do you need on set that
Right.
day to make that happen?
Because
Do you
speaking
need a
of,
vocal coach? I needed piano teachers. Do you need a representative from the union to be there? Do you need your music director? Do you need
you
your
need
composer?
your music editor there, you need a
Yeah.
composer. Because, and speaking of the thing about precision, as we've all talked about, we are often not the friend. We're often the enemy. Because we're the people, like when she's saying,
We're always
and
in
these
the
guys-
way.
the precision, you're in the way, and you're also the one. Like, so let's say these people are all singing, and she's watching them. And there's a monitor, so the music supervisor or the editor, whoever the people are in charge, are watching on screen, right? So let's say Julie goes, "Oh my God, that girl's off," in their particular case where they have the arrangers going, "Yeah, that girl's off," but the director thinks it's a perfect take. Okay, so one of them has to walk up and go, she was off. She's too
Yeah.
far off. We can't
Excuse
fix
me.
it. You need to do another take." And then someone's going, "What do you mean we're like behind schedule?" Or "That
Yeah,
was a perfect take," or whatever. And
and-
we're the ones who have to say,
I know what Bonnie was touching on too is that you can watch on a monitor, but there's a time delay. So you really can't
Right.
see lip sync. You really can't see. So oftentimes you're like crouched down behind a
Right.
speaker and you're like trying to watch the dancer. I mean, you're always in the way. They love you and then they don't love you. And so it's, you can be unpopular. I mean, we've all have stories of how he said, "Sorry, we need to do that again." And they want to move to the next scene. So, but if you don't say that and you get to post and it's a mess, it's your fault.
Yeah.
It's your fault.
They're hiring you for
Yeah.
your expertise.
Yeah. So
right. And I've
Um,
actually been in a situation where an actor tried to sabotage another actor. And, this thing about the earwigs is really true, that some actors really can't use it. And it's really challenging. And this is a million years ago, so I don't know if anyone saw it, but in this movie, My Best Friend's Wedding, there's a scene where we're singing, I say a little prayer in a restaurant, and it's all to lip sync. And Cameron Diaz is really struggling with how to use the earwigs and doesn't know how to use them. So Julia Roberts says, "Just take it out. You don't need it." And it was like, what? So it's like because she was like concerned she was going to become a big star. She's not. So she's like totally sabotaging her. Next, Rupert Everett's trying to sing along, and we're hearing it on mic. So we hear. So Julia, it's Labor Day weekend. It's like 100 degrees out. Everyone wants to go home. We're in Chicago. It's like the last scene, and we can't get. Rupert Everett keeps missing it over and over again. We can't get this part of the song right. And so we're hoping this is going to be the real final take. And we hear Julia say to him, "I saw you on such and such on Broadway, whatever this particular night was, and you like flubbed all your lines. Action!" And it's like literally she freaks him out. And then the director screams action, like right after she like humiliates him. And he goes, "Action." He's like, I say a little prayer. Like, totally. It took like 4 hours to try and get this one piece because of the constant like sabotage going on. So that's an example of not expecting something on the set.
And also, it's also worth pointing out, I think, too, that even if your goal is to record that number live, if you're going to record the vocals live, always have a pre-record available. Always, you always got to have a plan B. It's your fire insurance, because you never know if there might be. When we were shooting La La Land, the City of Stars, in their apartment, there was someone got shot down the street, and there were helicopters overhead most of the day, and we thought we weren't going to get it, so we were going to default to the pre-record. Luckily, we didn't have to at the end of the day, but at least we had it. So it's part of the job of something of these sort of films is to have as many plan Bs in place as possible for when the wheels do potentially fly off the cart.
So
And the
I-
oth-
And time is money on these.
Right.
This is the thing. Like you're working on, whatever, even medium budget, any type of budget. Like the producers are, breathing down their necks to the director to get these scenes shot. So there's really no room for error, and so
which is,
it's-
and then we're going to move to you guys about live, which is one of the reasons we do pre-records. I mean, it has to do with because if you have people shooting live, and like let's say we're even doing this scene, and we got him, and then we're cutting to each of us, and then cutting to you, and we're singing during it. If I'm singing live every time, even if I'm the most incredible singer in the world, it's going to be very tricky to cut all these different scenes together because I might not match. So by having a pre-recorded singing or pre-recorded music, there's more flexibility in the editing room. There's less money involved to have to keep doing multiple takes. Unless, of course, you're shooting a live type movie, and perhaps you guys could talk about Stars Born, your most recent live film you shot, and some things about shooting that.
and I just wanted to say, I also think probably when we find out that we're going to be doing a musical based project, the first person we think of is a playback operator. So that person is right next to the sound guy, and his job is to make sure that he has all the music in his system, so that when they say roll playback, he hits the button, and then and tying it all together.
And frankly, no. And you know what? That's a really good point, because frankly, sometimes on lower budget movies, they don't know what that is, and they don't think there's going to be one. And you have to be the one who explains, no. I need a playback operator.
They didn't want
this is their job. This is what they do. This is why we need them. And
they did not want a playback operator on Pitch Perfect.
Yeah.
Nope.
And I just shot this movie.
They did not want, I'll say it again, a playback operator on Pitch Perfect. And because they never made a musical, and we fought tooth and nail and said we wouldn't do the movie unless this person's on board. Because there's no way the movie could have been shot.
Because also it's not only just like they're pressing the button, there could be a million last minute changes that happen. So the playback operator is editing the cue if the director said, now we're going to start it here, and now we're going to take this part out in the middle, and we're just going to go to, and they're doing it on the fly, and they're super quick and great at what they do.
And they're calm. They've done it before. They don't get rattled. You try to get like we took a guy that lives in LA who we love, and we moved him to Atlanta. We're like, you have to move to Atlanta for 3 months because we can't do this movie without you. Yeah. So these people that you have in your arsenal that you work with, they're very good at what they do, and they don't get rattled on set, and they're your best friends because they allow you to get the shot.
Sometimes I do a lot of films overseas, and you don't have a relationship necessarily with the person. And I just shot this movie called Teen Spirit. Al Fanning is a teenage pop star in London last year. And there was one guy that I knew actually in London, this playback guy, and I really tried to get him. The production said, no, we're hiring this guy. He did Rogue One. He's awesome. Like, well, how does that apply?
Rogue One. One cue.
And one day on set, I think I was just telling Bonnie this today, I'm on the walkie. Okay, so this next take, we're going to start 2 bars later. There's this silence, and then I hear, what's a bar? I'm like, oh my God. So I had to walk over there and 1, 2, 3, 1.
All right, so if there's anything you ultimately gather from this whole panel, at least you know that the importance of a playback operator, and to wage that battle if you get a movie that has something, because it is one of the first things that they'll go like, why? You don't need a playback operator, because obviously that costs a lot of money, and it's crucial. Even on, when you talk about live, you want to talk about live and how you...
So Star is Born, which is coming out in 3 weeks. Very exciting process. I'm just trying to think where we start on this.
Okay, I'll ask you. You're shooting live.
Our sound. So again, gathering the team for this, we had the person who was actually the playback operator was also the sound person on the film, and he had worked with Steve on La La Land, and he was unbelievable. So it's a rare case that someone is doing the same job, but he was great. We also had our music editor on set with this, which was hugely important.
Sometimes they can be the same person depending on the kind of film, where a music editor is also a playback operator.
Yes.
Yep.
So I guess we can talk about Bradley and Gaga were insistent on doing this all live, and
which we never do,
which Warner Brothers rarely does. So didn't really know what was going to come of that. Our first day of shooting this movie was at Coachella, and we're shooting in between Gaga's weekend performances. So we shot that entire week with her, the band. Lucas Nelson band was Bradley Cooper's band in the film, and so that was our very first week of shooting this movie. Gaga, which was great, insisted on having her concert sound engineer there, because she really wanted that, that big concert sound. So that person was in place. He had a board on the side of the stage, and there were a lot of last minute things coming in. The songs were being written as we were shooting. Last minute, Bradley would be on stage and say, "Can we hear da da da?" We're all like,
what's that?
"Da-da
No, I'm not kidding.
is-" And then we'd have to call his engineer or Gaga's engineer in LA and get the track. There were a lot of things like that.
So the advantage of live is you can do that, right? On a playback thing, you couldn't do that because no one would lip sync, no one would have it. You wouldn't have the tapes. There'd be no way. And I just want to ask you one more thing as you're talking about this live thing. When
the
you're
instrumental
doing a movie
track
like
instrumentals were
recorded.
Yeah, were
because if you're
pre-recorded.
doing a concert, it would seem to me just as an audience member that if you did it to play back the singing, it wouldn't feel as authentic. That to really capture the movie you're making, and this goes back to your earlier discussion at the top when you first start a job, a big concert like that, doing it live really captures the concert more than if they were shooting it to playback, because you can get every element of what would happen, right, in their performance, their body language.
And the other
everything.
reason we could do it is because it was Lady Gaga. I mean, she can sing. So
every take was perfect.
Every single take. I mean, she's unbelievable. You can't do that with someone that doesn't have her range and her talent. And Bradley was amazing. I mean, he sang too, and he wrote songs, and he's super musical. And I mean, it was
worked with a vocal coach for like a year.
And it was really special because, I mean, there were many times we were crying on set. It was so emotional because she was singing live and playing the piano. And when you see Gaga play piano, I mean, that's when you're totally moved. So we're so honored to have worked on that film, but it was a challenge because the live factor, I mean, what Bonnie's saying, it was like one day we were on, it was during Coachella, so we didn't have our groove on yet. And Steve Morrow, the sound guy, he turns to me and he goes, "Black eyes?" And I go, "What are you talking about?" It was a song they had recorded the night before, and none of us knew that they had recorded a song the night before. And so there was a little kerfuffle. And but guess what? They were doing it live. So we heard it for the first time when they did it. So
did you like it?
It was good, yes. And it wasn't a full song. Back to what you're saying is they didn't need a full song. It was like a verse and a chorus or something. So they could do something the night before, but that's how that process went. But I think the cool thing is when you see the movie, it's so organic, the way the whole thing happened, that it comes through. And I think that's what people are reacting to.
And I think that's kind of what I was meaning, that's exactly the adjective I was missing, the organicness of it, that when you're doing a live concert thing like A Star is Born, where I'm sure all of us can't wait to see it, is that organic part is what comes out the best from doing a live performance that you can't get really, even with the best of us and the most experienced, in when they're lip syncing. No matter how hard you try, that extra little piece, that thing that you just je ne sais quoi, whatever it is that comes out, the organicness is really the perfect word we were looking for.
Now, did Bradley play guitar before you started shooting? That's another question.
He
to bring
learned
up. The
guitar, I believe, for the role. Yeah.
And he was musical before, but he really learned.
And I think Lucas Nelson probably helped him out. And Bradley also, was meeting with real musicians beforehand to kind of, get his look down and, style of playing and all that kind of stuff. So he was doing a ton of research before he shot this.
Something to factor into, sorry, when we were talking about the questions to ask is, does your talent need to learn how to play an instrument? Because you got to build that time into the schedule.
And need a hand double if they can't, because then you can be on wide shots. And so let's just say Bradley Cooper learned it, but not really learned it enough to play some fancy licks. So on wide shots, you could be on him, and then you'd go to a hand double sometimes on a close-up where they're really playing, because it's kind of hard to really learn to play a level at a certain expertise, but you can learn it enough to have wide shots. And that's, again, something you discussed early on, right?
Yeah, because Ryan with the piano in La La Land was actually the hardest part of the entire gig, to be honest.
Oh my God, yeah.
So it's something, and
did you have a hand? I assume you had a hand double
I
for
was
him.
his piano boss, I guess, is the best. Because we had a piano teacher, this really great jazz teacher named Liz Kinnett, and then we had this guy Randy Kerber, who you guys have worked with multiple times before.
Greatest.
So Liz taught him the mechanics of playing the piano, and Randy taught him the physicality of how an actual musician performs.
Right.
And so the two of them worked with him every single day. And I was the really unpopular. I'm surprised that Ryan never punched me at any point, because I was sort of following him around with keyboards on set or in rehearsal spaces. Like, oh, I got a
You were
keyboard
a
for you
big
over there in the
pain.
corner. You go, because it's that the director or the producers will check in with us. Like, okay, how is Bradley doing on guitar? How is Ryan doing on piano? And you maybe have to show them something on your iPhone. The director doesn't want to be bothered with the day-to-day of what they're doing, but you need to make them confident that it's covered and that the talent is learning and the talent will be ready when the day arrives.
And also tricky, because then you have to be involved with the coverage on the shots, like to let them know you're going to have some wide shots or some close-ups with the hand double. And then the thing about what you're talking about, the musicality, there's that whole issue with casting and someone teaching him how to move. Or I once had a thing where I had to match a hand double for Alfre Woodard, and it took us like almost 80 people whose hands we looked at, because she had unusual color of skin. And to match the coloring of her hand, because there are going to be close-ups on her playing the piano, was a chore in itself. Just finding a piano, and I'm sure you had that with
I
Ryan.
had to find a double for Ryan, but we never used him. The guy just sat in his trailer and enjoyed life.
But
for a
it was
while.
Plan B. It was Plan B.
It was totally always have a plan B.
Plan
If you
B.
walk out of the room with one lesson, always have a plan B.
And a playback operator.
yeah,
Plan
and a playback
B and a
operator.
playback operator.
That should be our next panel. Plan B.
The playback. Because we were really fortunate in that Damien had a very specific vision, and we knew going onto set, we knew exactly, okay, we're only going to see the shot, we're only going to see his hands for maybe these 8 bars, and then we're off. So it was meticulously planned, and we knew that he's not the type of guy to think on the fly or to make changes on set. So Ryan only needed to learn those 8 bars.
learn those 8
Yeah,
bars,
he can't
right.
play that song, but he can play that
8
bit.
bars. Right.
And so we knew that in advance, and we just drilled that into him. And so, for each song, okay, you needed to learn 4 bars of Start a Fire, you needed to learn this many bars of City of Stars, and,
Right, so
and
you
that's
cut-
all he
so
knows.
And voila,
So he can
reality
master-
suspended.
Yeah,
It's
so
like,
he can master that section. So then you just can, suspend reality that he's playing the rest perfectly, because the close-up are just on that. Oh, God, okay. We wanted to leave you guys time for questions, so we're sort of running out. Do you want to say one more thing about that before we move to questions? About your
I think-
Talk
I think-
about filming the live concert performances.
just saying,
Kenny,
on
'cause
filming
that's
the live
really
before we go to
fascinating,
questions.
I think. That's right, the Stars Born live
That's what I'm
concert
saying. Do you want to
performance.
ask one more thing about that before they go to questions? About filming it, how you actually had to film it? Okay, no, we'll go with questions.
No, I mean, what I can say is the Coachella shots. There were cameramen all over the stage, like trying, getting
Reaction
getting
shots and
Bradley, getting the bass player, getting the keyboardist, like covering that whole thing. I think it was really important that Bradley's band was made up of actual musicians. I mean, that adds a whole other thing to it too. And that was, we were lucky that we were able to do that.
So Maddie on set, our DP,
Yeah.
there were overhead crane shots. Really, it was like our DP was on set with, I don't even know what that camera's called, where it's
Yeah.
on him. He was doing it. I mean, he was going in and out of the musicians and
Yeah.
on Bradley and on Gaga. He was there in the playing of the band, so it seems really real.
Like you're on stage.
Yes, like you're on
That's
stage.
how
That's a better way
this
to say it.
movie feels.
Thank you guys for attending. I think they've signaled that our time was up, so I hope it's
Thank
didn't
you so much for
overwhelm you and
coming.
gave
Thank
you
you.
enough of